Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to an information seminar. Dale Chen. Dale is MD of Future Direct, one of the shining stars in international visas in Ireland. And as he's sharing with me, they're going from strength to strength. So clearly there's a need and a want for international people coming into Ireland to work, as is indicated by people on the call. And Ian Cahill is my name. I'm the MD and founder of G Wards Health. And we provide a non-insured solution to access urgent care GPs and other well-being services particularly for the international diaspora. When they come into Ireland, they have a difficulty in accessing GPs just to get simple things like acid prescriptions. And I know Dale's a client of ours, so he may give me a kind shout out towards the end of the call. So the idea of today, ladies and gentlemen, is rather than it be a sort of a show and tell presentation, which I'm a little bit averse to at times, I thought we would probably do a little bit of a Q&A between Dale and I. If you do have a question, please put it into the chat, and then we can ask the questions as we go through the day. And we did solicit one or two questions by email through Emma, which we'll share with as well, just to give it out. But if anyone's any queries, this is all about your time to ask the experts about what's happening in the world of international employment and international visas into Ireland. So, Dale, thank you very much for coming on the call. And I know you and I did one of these calls back about 12, 18 months ago, but I know that the landscape for the international employment market is changing. Maybe you might give us some insights to what you're seeing, both in terms of legislation and also how you find the marketplace in terms of acquisition of people right now, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Ian, for the introduction, and thanks for everyone for joining the call. Yeah, I think most of us might have seen the data that was released regarding the number of permits issued by the employment permit section in 2023. I think that's 2024, which was about 24% increase compared to the previous year in 2023. And I think that itself is an illustration to the policy that's out there right now.
Sorry, Dale, just statistics are great, but if 23% is 4 people have an application and if one person gets it, it's 25% increase. And we got some real numbers around that?
I do, yeah. So the number of total permits issued in 24 is approximately 38,000. 38,000 permits issued in 24. A 24% increase from 2023, which is a huge improvement. And particularly at the beginning of 2024, there was an expansion of employment permit policy, which opened doors to more occupations, which was previously not eligible for work permits and has become eligible for work permits, which contributed to the increase in the entire year in 2024. And we expect that to continue in 2025 because there hasn't been any changes to the policies. They have released quota for certain employment permits, and there was supposed to be a change in salary, as most people might be aware. There was supposed to be a change in salary, which is the minimum salary required for work permits. It was supposed to come into effective in January 2025, and that has been deferred due to feedback from industries and stakeholders. The employment permit section has accepted survey feedback, and they would most likely release more information in the second quarter, after the second quarter.
Okay, so just to allay my ignorance here, so what now is the salary threshold, and does that differ across various different sectors?
Yeah. So in 2024, the minimum salary requirement for general employment permit increased from 30,000 to 34,000. It was supposed to increase even further to approximately 38,000 in 2025, but that has been deferred.
And is that across every sector, or is that sort of sector specific?
It will across most sectors. There is a couple of exceptions, but it will be across most sectors.
Okay, brilliant. Well, look, somebody did send in a question here from Annie, who said, look, I wonder if Dale could touch on the list of job titles that fall under general or critical skills, particularly in finance. Yeah. So obviously they're trying to figure out what that differential looks like.
100%. So there is only 2 lists of occupations. There is the ineligible list of occupations for employment permits, and that's easily found on the employment permit section's website. And then there is also a critical skill list of occupations that are eligible for critical skill employment permit. Now, there is no specific list for general employment permits because it's very difficult to capture all of the occupations for general. So what the government says is that if your job is not on the ineligible list of occupations, it would be eligible for a general employment permit in most cases. So to answer your question, if you want to know whether your occupation or job title is eligible for general employment permit, you just have a look at the ineligible list. And if it's not on it, then the chances are it's most likely eligible for general employment permit at least. And then if you were to look at the critical skill, if it also happens to be on the critical skill occupation list, then it could also be eligible for critical skill employment permit.
And what's the difference? Is there a salary difference between critical and general?
Yeah. So for general employment permits, the minimum salary is 34,000 or higher for a general employment permit, and that is based on a 39-hour week. And then the critical skill, the minimum salary is 38,000 per annum at the moment. That's also based on the 30-hour week.
Okay. And can I ask, where are we seeing the greatest number of applicants coming from country-wise? Is there a sort of a geographic link?
Definitely. So out of the 38,000 permits that was issued last year, approximately 13,000 was from India, the highest by far, and then approximately 4.5 thousand from Brazil, and then approximately 4,000 from Philippines, 2,000 from China. But you can see the trend clearly that the first place, India, which is about 13,000, is more than three times the next second place, which is Brazil, 4.5.
Wow. I mean, you know, we, from GWorld's health point of view, we kind of working with the international diaspora. We have two targets. One are the Indian diaspora, who've got 150,000 registered the last time I checked. So you're talking about 10% nearly coming in on an annual basis in terms of growth. And then the Brazilians that last time were about 80,000. So you're seeing a 5% growth on the Brazilian side. Yeah.
And another thing is, in terms of sector-wise, a huge section of it is from healthcare, followed by ICT, and then definitely construction engineering is also one at the top as well.
Okay, brilliant. So look, can you talk us through the application process? So, you know, if we decided that we wanted to take somebody in from an ITC point of view, for example, then what is that process we've got to walk through?
Yeah. So if you're hiring an international person who is outside the country, and they're from a non-EA state, I mean, they're not within the European Union and a number of other states, then they would first need to apply for an employment permit. And then the second step, depending on their country, they apply for an entry visa. So I'll give an example. Let's say if we're hiring from a South African national, that individual will need an employment permit, and that could be a general employment permit or a critical skill employment permit, depending on the occupation and the salary threshold. And once the general employment permit or critical skill permit is approved, a South African national will also need to apply for an entry visa or a work entry visa in this case, because he's coming in for the purpose of employment. That entry visa is applied online, and then they submit the original documents to the Irish embassy in their country of residence. Let's say in this case, that person's in South Africa, then he'll submit the original documents to the local Irish embassy. So that is a two-application process. And once the employment permit is approved and the entry visa is approved, then that individual will book a flight to come in. However, another scenario could be, let's say, if you also hire somebody from US or Canada, where they are on the list of countries that does not need an entry visa to come in the country. So the Irish government have a list of countries that requires visa and a list of countries that doesn't need a visa. So let's say if the individual is from, let's say, US or Canada, then they would just need the employment permit. Whether it's general or critical, they just need the employment permit. And then they can book a flight after the permit is approved. They can book a flight in straight away and fly in the country. That's if the individual is overseas. And between employment permits, approximately 1 month to 2 months max, and the visa 1 month to 2 months max. So that's a longer lead time compared to the next scenario I'm talking about if the individual is currently in the country. So let's say For example, a lot of recruiter and hiring managers are probably seeing a lot of candidates who apply on a stamp 1G. And if you're wondering what the 1G is, it is a graduate visa. The G, most cases, the G stands for graduate, and is given to a lot of students, international students, as Ian mentioned, who come in the country to study, whether it's a master program or a bachelor program. When they graduate, the Irish government will give them a stamp 1G, which is a graduate visa to allow them to stay in the country, explore the job market, and then secure a full-time job in which they can apply for a work permit in the long run. So a lot of people who apply on a stamp 1G would also need the employment permit. Now, because they're already in the country, then they don't need an entry visa anymore because they're here already. So they would just need the employment permit, regardless of what country they're coming.
And when the employment permit is applied for by the company or by the individual?
It could be applied by the company or the individuals or by third-party agents such as yourself. Once it's applied correctly and minimize risk of refusals or mistakes, then it doesn't really matter who makes the application. In most cases, it's an application process with quite a high learning curve. So that's why a lot of HRs or individuals will tend to come to an agent such as yourself to look after the application.
Okay. And the obvious thing then is, in what circumstance does a visa get refused, which is probably the bit that we all want to understand.
Yes. So when you ask that question about visas, I want to distinguish the employment permit is applied with the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, or the DETE, which is the first step. And the second step is the entry visa, which is applied with the Irish Embassy, which is under the Department of Justice. So let me answer that question for both cases. For the employment permit, which is the first application, it's quite rare that we see a refusal. If common reason for refusal is if the application was not done correctly, such as if the document provided was not sufficient, or if the labor market test for the general permit was not conducted correctly, or if any of the information provided by the candidate or the employer didn't match up or it wasn't consistent, they might look for further clarification. But overall, the employment permit is relatively straightforward. However, the entry visa, which is applied with the local Irish embassy in the country of residence, if that person happens to be abroad and they're also from a visa required country, they would check quite a lot of information on the individual, such as their police clearance, their bank accounts, previous immigration history and employment status, reason for coming in, ties to the home country, etc., etc. There's a lot of check, which is more like a background check on the individual before they stamp their passports, allow them to enter Ireland. For that element, they would look at, have you been abroad illegally, or have you made any offense in terms of immigration-wise in previous country that you were in before? If you had any criminal records, because they look for police clearance, all those will be red flags and will be high risk to refusals in this case. And which is why, in general, if when we deal with a client, we generally get that information at the beginning, because if an employment permit is approved but the visa is refused, then the person cannot come in the country at all. So with our service, we generally do a quick check at the beginning just to make sure everything will be in order for both process. If not, we'll generally flag for our clients, who are generally the HR managers, just to let them know potential risks that might come up.
That's fairly in-depth. And I'm kind of curious from a position of slight ignorance, Dale, but two things. How long does a graduate one or a G1 visa last for? Because I kind of hear of situations where, people produce it and then they find that it's no longer valid from a work point of view. Yeah. So is there sort of a distinguishing factor?
Yes. So for somebody come to Ireland to study a level 8 program, they would be granted a 1-year graduate visa after they complete the bachelor program. And then if someone's coming to do a level 9 master program, they'll be given 2 years of a graduate visa. Now, it's renewable every year, but they can renew for up to 2 years. We also get a lot of scenarios where after their 1 year or 2 years, when they're close to the expiry date, if they still haven't secured a work permit, sponsorship, or in the process of doing so, but the visa is about to expire, the 1G is about to expire, we can also get that extended for them on exceptional grounds, if they have something lined up that they're about to apply for work permits now. So it is possible to apply for extensions for those graduates. So another good, interesting question we got asked quite a lot is, let's say if somebody is in your company and their work permit is cancelled, or if they don't work out, it is also possible for a work permit holder to get extension as well if they happen to leave their job for whatever reason.
So that, if I'm right, just picking the last bit, Dale, what was happening is that you had a coming into Ireland was very much tied to the employer because the work permit was tied to the employment as opposed to the employee.
Correct.
And has something changed? You can now, and somebody coming in can now move to another employer with the same work visa, or did it change?
Yes. That's two separate questions there. Let's say let's say if I hire someone who's on an employment permit, and the employee is tied to work, the permit may be granted for 2 years, but the employee is tied to the employer for the first 9 months. So they cannot leave within the first 9 months unless in exceptional grounds. And if they were to decide to leave after 9 months, the employee would have to secure a brand new employment permit with the next employer before they can engage with the employment with the next employer. So that's the first scenario. Let's say the second scenario, if I have an employee who's on a work permit and for whatever reason it didn't work out, and if I need to let that employee go, as HR, as a company, I would just need to notify the employment permit section of this person and give the reference number that, for whatever reason, this doesn't work out and you want to cancel the work permit. And then it will be up to the individual himself or herself to either return back to their home country or apply for a visa extension or alternative visa with the immigration office. But that would be the responsibility of the individual. From the company's perspective, you just need to notify the relevant department to cancel that work permit for the individual.
Okay, brilliant. And I just see we've a question here from Sarah asking, is the G1 stamp the same for the Northern Ireland as it is for Republic of Ireland?
No, yeah, the stamp 1G is only for the Republic of Ireland.
And is there an equivalent in the north of Ireland?
That I'm not too sure, to be honest with you, but I imagine there will be something similar.
Okay, brilliant. Obviously, all of this is not a free service, and I'm not talking about your cost here for a second, but there is a cost. There obviously financial risk about making applications, is there, for any company, so you prevent people just going silly at it?
Yeah. So there's another question there popped up there, Ian. So for both of these services, we would generally provide a quote based on where the person is, whether the person needs just the work permit or the visa applications. And also if there's any complications, such as, let's say, if the person's currently in the country or the visa is about to expire, we will look after most of the scenarios. And depending on the situation they're in, there will be a fixed cost for the type of application they're looking for.
Okay, so they know what's happening before they enter the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Generally, we would get a complimentary discovery call with either the individual or the company that's recruiting them. Get an idea of what's going on first, so that we can give a clear picture of what is the proposal, what is the necessary step, the timeline, and then the cost.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. Carl has asked the question, what's your gut feel on the minimum salary increasing to 39,000 euros?
Okay.
How long's a piece of string? It's the bit that sits here. So we hold it you professionally, Dale, but kind of interest.
There has been a lot of pushback overall from what I hear from companies and on the employment permits proposed salary increase. And looking at their original proposal, which was published in December 23, 2025 figure that was supposed to come into effective in January. For general permits, it was 39. Apology, it was 39K. And for critical skill, it was supposed to change to 44, from 38 to 44. And then for general permit, it's 34 to 39. These are huge increases. My gut feeling, I don't think it will go to that level if they were to increase it, to be honest. With the feedback that I'm getting from our clients and different stakeholders, there's a lot of voice against it, against that kind of level of.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'll throw my top and say a very good friend of mine, a country manager for one of the meat processing businesses, and I know that there was a sharp intake of breath when it got announced, specifically around the fact that you're bringing in what is, high skilled but lower paid employees to fill the roles that don't get filled, but the impact of paying the lower tier of worker means you got to push that right to the organization, so that the ripple effect is much more expensive than just that 39,000 pound threshold. And I think that's the biggest pushback we're seeing in the marketplace right now. And as you say, certainly the sense is from business leaders that they just can't absorb that much risk from a business point of view right now. And I think the US change in regime is going to have people draw a breath on lots of things, to be fair.
The additional cost, given the additional cost of the relocation, immigration, and it's a huge cost to bear for employers, especially SMEs, if they're looking to hire international talents.
Yeah, so look, just from our own side of it, I was at a Indian Irish Business Association network event there about 2 weeks ago in Dublin, and they talked about one of the biggest challenges companies are facing for bringing employees in has been around things like healthcare access to education. Are you seeing that as being a barrier to why people won't come into Ireland?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't really catch that.
Yeah, so there was a roundtable discussion had about bringing employees into Ireland, and one of the challenges they were facing was simple access to healthcare. So Irish healthcare was proving to be a part of the challenges. So you've got healthcare being one, accommodation or access to living being the second piece. So are you seeing those as being pushbacks from an employee as opposed to employer point of view?
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned healthcare and accommodation is definitely a big challenge, and I'm sure most people are aware. Definitely for healthcare is not, and in fact, is for healthcare in particular, it's new to a lot of people. In certain countries, for the likes of medical insurance, healthcare system is completely different. So it is a new system that they have to get used to. Accommodation, although it's common worldwide, but it's a difficulty to get accommodation, and it's a challenge for employers as well, because a lot of times the employee who's coming from overseas will rely on the employer, and they it's a huge burden and process to go through for a lot of employers, and I can certainly understand why it's a challenge for most people.
Okay, brilliant. Without crystal ball gazing too much, Dale, we've seen a 24% increase in visas in 2024. What's your prediction around, from what you're seeing activity wise, for growth in 25 and 26? Have we leveled off, or we still need the same ambition?
Definitely this year, the employment permit section from the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, they would publish the statistics on their website. Is public information of how many permits is being issued every month. So looking at the January figure and the February, the February figure is not yet out. Looking at the January figure, it seems to be increasing, and comparing to January of 24 by a significant amount. So I think in 2025, the trend is definitely going up. And I don't see any sign of stopping, given the fact that there's still a huge shortage across all sectors, spanning from healthcare, engineering, construction, and IT.
Very good. Okay, brilliant. Well, look, we did say we would keep this seminar to 30 minutes, and amazingly, Dale, we could probably quiz you all day. If the question an interviewer should always ask is, what question did I not ask that your clients ask you the most? I would say
it's the only, not rather than questions, they would get a lot of different questions, but one thing I would probably say is I guess not to be afraid of asking questions about the different visa stamps, because one of the common things that I see is recruiters or employers might find it daunting when they see a candidate who apply with a requirement of visa sponsorships or visa requirements, and that's can cost you losing a candidate. But certainly from an employer's perspective, it's always just keep an open mind to these candidates. And if there is anything that's unsure, you can either look it up online, or you can simply call us on Future Direct. We're more than happy to answer those questions. But one of the common things we see is employers or recruiters would tend to find it quite daunting when they see this kind of scenario. But in matter of fact, it could be simplified once you're talking to the right person or you're carrying out the right process.
Okay, brilliant. And so just to be able to contact you and your team, Dale, it's all the W's are HTTPS. It's futuredirect.com or .ie.com.
FutureDirect.
Okay, so futuredirect.ie. I know, Dale's been a client of ours now for over a year, and they're expanding. So they are the leaders in this international visa space. And I know certainly we've used Dale on questions, and the team is really going to come back responses. And then on our side, for GWard's Health, our interest in this space lies in the fact that we give access to urgent care to GPs, same-day GPs, without having to buy the insurance cost. And Dale, I know you're a client of ours, and so maybe you might just explain value to you as a business owner for this?
Oh yeah, but Ian, thanks for the wonderful service that's delivered. We generally would have it incorporated into our package for our staff. It's been a great help for our staff to be able to get immediate access to healthcare, straight away. So that's been really beneficial, and it's been really highly commended by our staff as well.
Brilliant. Okay, super. So look, ladies and gentlemen, it's 1 o'clock. If somebody has any last minute question, please reach out, or we'll wrap it up in the next 30 seconds. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that looks to be wrapped. So listen, thank you all very much. If people believe there's an interest in this, we may run it. What I will do is I will tidy up this recording. We'll make it available through our YouTube channel. And so it'll be a sort of a font of information for people to use. And Dale, we might schedule this for maybe 6 months out, just for an update in terms of what's happening at that stage. Is that okay?
That's good. And thanks everyone for joining the call.
Thank you. Cheers.